Good evening. It's 6:37, and welcome to tonight's special City Council meeting for August 9, 2018. Pledge of Allegiance first, we're led by myself, but please, everybody, please stand and join me. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam City Clerk, we have roll call, please.
Councilman Spence. Councilmember Toma.
Here.
Councilmember Warshaw.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wu.
Here.
Mayor Johnson.
Here. First of all, Madam City Attorney, is there anything to report out of closed session?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. There was no reportable action taken in closed session this evening.
Thank you. City Manager, any changes to the agenda?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are no changes to tonight's agenda.
Okay, first of all, is public comment. And please remember, on public comment, the only thing we want to comment is on what's on the agenda. So the City Clerk will call the names, please.
Will do, but we do have an adjournment motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's do that first. I do apologize. We do have an adjournment motion. Tonight, we would like to adjourn our council meeting in honor of Linda Clifton. Linda is the sister-in-law of West Covina Police Department Officer Kyle Clifton. Linda passed away on August the 1st after a battle with cancer. She grew up in West Covina and later moved to Orange County with her husband and 2 children. Our deepest condolences go out to the Clifton family. Ms. City Clerk, please make an adjournment motion in this meeting. Thank you.
Will do. Our first speaker tonight will be John Shoemaker, followed by Elsie Messman.
Probably not much to say because people have probably some pretty set ideas. So there'll be a lot to say if it goes onto the ballot to the electorate. But I was thinking about one thing on the way over. You know, there is some what's the right word? Some pleasure in knowing that in 20 years, if this thing gets passed, one of my grandchildren will be sitting up here while people are complaining about the horrible budget situation the city is in, and that grandchild will be able to say, you know, if we had listened to my grandfather 20 years ago, you know, and kind of if we had listened to some people 10 years ago, we wouldn't be in this problem. So as things change, they stay the same. But fortunately, we might have, you know, one of your children on the school board, so there'll be at least 2 people who fight any of the, I mean, on the city council will be fighting any of the taxes there. So let's see what happens, and we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Elsie Messman, followed by Jerry Patras.
Mayor, council, staff, everyone here tonight and at home, my name is Elsie Messman. I'm really ashamed that I know 3 unthoughtful council members that let 21 employees from the maintenance department. In case you didn't know, you're just as much responsible for this situation in the city as the city manager and his staff is. Your ungratefulness will be remembered by the residents. If you want to put another tax in, that's a lazy man's way of doing it. If you look at the warrants list every week, you would realize what is happening. A perfect example, on our property tax, the city increased the sewer fee. So what did they give the staff more money so they could buy 6 new trucks for over $249,000, a body lift for $37,000, and a sewer cleaner for $422,000. My question is, are all these trucks necessary, and couldn't they be fixed, and was a sewer cleaner necessary item? Wasteful spending and bad timing. And by the way, your assistant manager said that the restrooms at Shadow Oak Park needed a line to the sewer system. Well, should not affect the project, as the expense comes from the sewer project. And I'd like to list some things that the city has done that I think we could Think twice about it without putting a tax on everybody. Like the city spent $36,000 in a year and a half for graffiti paint and supplies, and that's not including 2 employees. The first 3 months of this year, we paid at least 9 different consultants. What's staff doing? On March 7th, we paid the San Gabriel Valley Council of Government for the Homeless $24,000. The first 3 months of this year, the city paid 6 different engineering companies. In fact, we paid one over $47,000. Don't we have some kind of an engineer on staff? Replace and install an oak tree at Orangewood Park for $6,000. And we are worried what the cost to trim one tree is. In January, we paid $32,000 to fix and complete landscaping at Orangewood Park. For Orangewood Building Inspector, we paid over $29,000. Bicycle Master Plan, just this year, we paid $32,000. To repair the gym floor, we paid $134,000. Did the attorney take a 10% cut? Her services are listed as legal fees, so we don't know what she's doing. In March, we paid her $28,000, in May, $37,000. What is staff hiding? Does this council know what it's for? We have 4 law firms in 3 months, and this is over and above the retainer of $13,500. On January 24th, the city went to Vista Smog Center for a smog test, $48. This does not include a certificate. Now, Ford of West Covina charges $96. I don't think a certificate costs $48. We are spending tens of thousands of dollars on computers. We all have all kinds of different companies. Does anybody know what they're doing? We paid one company this year over $94,000 for an update. When is this going to stop? We are going to pay $10 to the police and $10 for fire for the alarm systems. A lot of retirees are living on a budget. Let's not destroy this city by taxes. Let's work this out so that maybe we can bring it closer and make ends meet, because we certainly don't need to vote for another stairway enclosure. Look at all the money we could have saved by firing all the staff and replace them with outside engineers, consultants, and maybe even a robot. Thank you.
Jerry Patras, followed by Bill Robinson.
Jerry Patras, West Covina resident. I've actually read the staff report, and I'm appalled at the wish list that, but I'm not surprised, I'm just appalled. I knew that was going to be there. We're going to hire, we're going to have a real fun time, and way down in there we find the word pensions. Might possibly be addressed. If this whole thing just dealt with pensions, I wouldn't be so angry and pushing back, but it doesn't. I would like to draw your attention to section 21-108, and the title is Amendment. I spent decades writing policy that had to get through my employer's attorney, and I get focused on words. That paragraph has a semicolon in the middle. The part to the left of it is what the council may do if this ordinance gets passed. And it says the city council may, by ordinance, amend, repeal, renumber, or recodify any or all of the provisions of this article. I think that actually is a problem. The word amend could be and would be, by many people, interpreted that a future council can change this without the vote of the people, and the vote of the people's on the other side of the semicolon. That is a problem. The word amend needs to come out. So fine for a title. But some other city, I looked in my old dictionary that I used, a law dictionary, amend is to alter or improve upon. So some future council may decide they're going to improve on this, that you're doing, if it passes, with the intent to spend certain monies for certain things. Well, a future council can just decide to change it. And that's not right. And I'm really concerned about it and bothered by it because we've gone from deficit budget to inline budget, deficit budget to balanced budget, deficit budget to what we're at now, surplus budget. The words in this document, if it goes to the voters, which I think you will do, and if it gets passed, that word amend is important and it needs to come out. Thank you.
Bill Robinson, followed by JD.
Good evening, gentlemen. Bill Robinson, resident. The dead-on-arrival proposal to increase property parcel taxes won't pass, won't help break the unsustainable cost spirals we face with PERS, pension costs, and OPEB medical costs. A friend shared he'd only support the tax measure if proceeds were used exclusively to offset PERS and OPEB, only if proceeds were used to offset those two debt obligations, and guaranteed by unambiguous, Mrs. Poulters was mentioned, unambiguous ballot language. Hey, if you want to play games and put in vague language and you expect to pass it, good luck. Moreover, election costs are unaffordable, and City Council seems unconcerned about finding valid election cost estimates. Past council habitual overspending patterns won't be cured with a ballot measure. There's never enough revenue, nor will there ever be enough revenue to satisfy the demands of the 9 bargaining units. We residents will easily be eaten alive by this monster if we can't contain the evolving and escalating cost demands. A better first step is to bring spending under control and discontinue the past cycle of greed and fiscal laxity and past approvals of unaffordable labor contracts. Obviously, the residents and the bargaining units have opposing interests when it comes to pay and benefits. We need to know who council really represents. Voters may decide you don't represent them. We can't afford to place a tax increase on the ballot every election to satisfy endless demands of the pampered elite bargaining units. Sadly, the habitual tendency of council to approve overly generous bargaining agreements that the city cannot afford endures during the past 5 years and in the decades before that. So change direction. Disciplined respect for budget guidelines and maturity can counter unrestrained free spending practices. Labor costs are way too high. Gradually rebalance and pay down the debt mess, budget black hole. Adopt pay-as-you-go budgeting. The imbalance can be corrected. You need to get labor relations in order because salaries of both retirees and current staff are 90% of the budget. And council can underline the gravity of our fiscal crisis by declaring a fiscal emergency. We need to become a compassionate city, one day at a time, which means we will not allow unnecessary layoffs. To my knowledge, you haven't backed away from a clearly wrong-headed proposal for city maintenance. We cannot support the layoffs of blue-collar workers to give unconscionable pay increases to white-collar workers. So we've been fooling around with this budget situation for 5 years, same story every year, including 10 or more special meetings recently. Now the election filings are due in about 24 hours, and I assume nobody up here is going to accept responsibility for the current state of affairs. Are we wielding power irresponsibly in West Covina? That word has been hurled back and forth during council discussions recently. We are definitely on an unsustainable path. Residents cannot accept the consequences of your past council choices and spending spree. We need better budgeting advice so we can gradually come back into balance.
I'm sorry, Bill. That's it. Next, please.
Next speaker is JD, followed by Chris Miller.
It's been a while, gentlemen. Good evening. Mr. Warshaw, I expect great things from you tonight. I expect a no vote. Based on your analysis of a specific tax versus a sale tax, you didn't want it to be strictly on the residents. You wanted us to collect monies from people outside. This tax, parcel tax, is not just on the residents. It's targeted towards the homeowners, which I'm one. So, sir, I really hope that tonight you will keep to your logic, your fairness, and you will vote no on this parcel tax. I see that, if I'm not mistaken, Pomona raised their tax, 1.5, sales tax. And I also read that someone that was dear to us, Mr. Glassman, participated in sneaking in the back door funding for the library for that tax. So many of us residents are concerned, rightly so, that while you may sell this as a safety tax for the purpose of supporting police and fire, in addition to all the fees for the alarms and the going out and inspecting businesses and hitting them with the $100 cost, that you guys are going to really sneak in and use this money in other ways than that. But before you get my household to vote on something like this, you need to really show us residents that you're willing to cut back. Because laying off the lowest paid employees of West Covina, which I was appalled that Mr. Warsaw, Mr. Toma, the two most liberal-minded on the, well, Lloyd runs close, on council, not once directed a plea to the city manager trying to save, at least not publicly, to try to save those jobs. You gave this mea culpa, I'm so sorry, I really feel your pain, but they left. But not once did you two stand up for those employees, those blue collars, and say, you know what? We've got a $500,000 surplus now. Let's try to find a way to save these guys this job. We're going to put a hardship on them financially, their marriage. We're going to do a disservice to our city because we're going to have less services. You didn't direct your energies to those employees. That was a disappointment for me. So I don't consider myself conservative or liberal, but I like to see at least a little bit of fair play. So for that reason, Mr. Warshaw, I expect that you will strongly consider voting no on tonight's target parcel tax on homeowners. Thank you, sir.
Chris Miller, followed by Teresa Cosad.
To follow up a little bit on JD, you know, to be quite frank, I would be for a sales tax if it solely went to pensions. And it doesn't, because our budget is a black hole. There's all this expenditure year after year, it keeps on growing. The payroll keeps on coming up, and it's unwarranted. We're in trouble, yet raises are given out. Part of it is a fear of people leaving. Well, if you had an actual good work environment without politics and without issues, people wouldn't want to leave. There's no emphasis on improving the work quality in the fire department, in the police department. If anything, it sounds like it's getting worse and worse. So, let's focus on there. Bring in new blood, like Mr. Wu has said. By doing that, you bring down the pay. Industries do that. They don't keep on hiring top-heavy people to make work. Getting 10 chiefs isn't going to solve anything, but if you have a management where you have let's say every 5 employees has a manager that they report to, that they feel that they can get things resolved rather than a big bureaucracy, the work environment gets better because concerns are listened to. Listening to people at the low level, how to make things better. From what we see on the outside, money is being wasted. We train people to do graffiti response. How much was that quoted to save? Now you're letting those people off. Not only did you train them and put them to work and hire them, but now they're being let go. We're buying all this equipment. Who's going to run that equipment? An outside firm? It's not what we heard. So let's get this really fixed, instead of a shell game year after year. Otherwise, a course of action, a detailed plan is to remove 3 council members and basically upper management and restart fresh, new, with a detailed audit look and master plan of how to run the city. Because right now we're being run into the ground. Thank you.
Teresa Casad, followed by Frederick Sykes.
Good evening. I have never spoken at a meeting before, but I find things that are going on in the city not to be too good. And I'm just here to ask you to take a look again at what you want to put up for a vote, because in that, I could even go for some kind of a tax with a limit, maybe 5 years, with strict oversight that went only to pensions. But we don't really know, as other people have said, what that money's going to go for. And you're having trouble managing the city right now. So what's that money going to do? It's not going to help. It's just like when people overspend, and then they want to get more credit to overspend and overspend. That's what you're doing. And that's not the way to run a city. I've lived here all my life. My daughter just bought my mom's house. Then she just passed away. So my grandkids are going to grow up here. I want a city that they can be proud of. I don't want a city with all of these hassles that are going on. I don't want a city that lays off our maintenance workers. So really think about what you're doing. Thank you.
Frederick Sykes, followed by Alfred Williams.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, members of the audience. I'm Frederick Sykes, 40-year resident of the city, also former mayor, and currently I'm on a commission for LA County. When you look at the audience, there's a big problem we have, and that's not enough people paying attention. It's been that way for far too long. Not paying attention, not involved. I said it before, and now I will repeat. The city of West Covina is bankrupt. The city of West Covina has an emergency financial situation. Every stakeholder needs to be involved, thinking, trying to figure out what is the best way for all of us to solve this issue. For decades, our city has been led by the mindset of personal gain and just too many decisions that were not in the best interest of the taxpayers. There is no single solution that will solve our financial problem today. We need to freeze salaries, eliminate all unnecessary travel. When we must travel, we need to cut back to a minimum of standards and travel plans and reservations. And we need to spend within the budget and become more efficient at what we do. Any and all luxury upgrades should not be paid by the taxpayers, but by the traveler that's representing the city. If you're going to propose a tax, why would you want only to burden the residents and the businesses located inside West Covina? Why not seek out a broader tax base? And if we fail to tax ourselves, if the residents say no more taxes, not even a little more, where will the money come from for the small amount of city services that we still have and the unfunded millions in employee pensions and retirement benefits? Furthermore, it is not realistic to think that our city will be able to bring enough new businesses to balance our budget. Albertsons at East Lake Center, East West Market at Quail Ridge Center, Barnes & Noble, Toys R Us, Babies R Us in West Covina, and the Elephant Bar, places I used to see here, right here in our city, and they are all closed. So we need to think, how many businesses have closed and opened in West Covina just this year alone? Most importantly, the city needs a plan to solve the capital's retirement taxpayer burden, and we need it fast. City services are so reduced that taxpayer dollars are now starting to just pay for the city employee pensions and retirement benefits. The majority of the City Council needs to make a decision, and the City of West Covina, without that decision and without it done properly, will be forced to file for bankruptcy. You can't just sit there and do nothing. I'm speaking to the majority. I know we got one that's not going to do anything, but the four of you need to put your heads together and come up with something that's going to help save the city from going under. Thank you.
Alfred Williams, followed by Sarah Love.
Good evening. My name is Alfred Williams, 40-year resident of over 40 of West Covina. I'm against this tax. I remember when I first came to West Covina, one of the things that I noticed, that this tax doesn't seem to have an end on it. So that means it's in perpetuity. So it goes on. When does it stop? Nobody knows. But if you got a tax that's going to provide unlimited resources to any department, they're going to keep getting the most that they can. When I first came to West Covina, my trash collection was $5 for 3 months. It was based on CPI. This proposal also is based on CPI. So that means right now I pay $100 for every 3 months, or $400 a year, okay? If we just take that and translate it over to this tax that we're going to start out, I'm going to start out at $52. In 40 years, I'm going to be paying $4,000, okay? So you're going to be getting more than enough money just from individual taxpayers out there. And you're putting the whole burden on each individual taxpayer. I think you should, like other people have said, you should have a tax that, if you're going to do it, and if I had to select one, I would select something that was broad-based, like a sales. I don't want sales either, but at least if I don't want to spend money in West Covina, I can go somewhere else. And that's the way everybody else is going to think, okay? So what you're doing It's not solving a problem, just putting a Band-Aid on it and putting it out in the future. And also, it was saying that the voters have a right to reject this at some point. Well, how do we do that? Do we require another 2/3 vote to get rid of it? I mean, how do the voter really come down and say, I want to get rid of this tax once you've implemented? Because all of a sudden, whoever's on this board up here, or this council, wants to raise it, however they wants to raise it, or the CPI goes crazy, okay? So I think this is a really bad idea. I hope you don't vote on this tonight. Thank you.
Sarah Love, followed by Ana Montaigne Munoz.
I am a homeowner in West Covina, and I oppose the tax big time. I was at the budget meeting a couple weeks ago, but not the last one, and I mean, I heard all this stuff like, we don't want to hurt the residents, and that's exactly what you're doing. I mean, I am a loud homeowner too, so I'll make as much noise as I can and let everybody know that this is basically for the pensions. It's unlimited, it seems like, and it makes us homeowners upset. I mean, my husband is disabled. We can't afford to pay for your mistakes. We just can't. I mean, there's a lot of people that are in our boat. So I'm opposing that tax. And I also want to say that at the budget meeting, I was happy about the questions that you asked, more like a CEO and not a politician. So we're going to make a lot of noise about this, but I hope you vote no.
Ana Montaigne Munoz, and our last speaker for the evening, Gail Mason.
Good evening. This is my first time speaking in a meeting as well. Mayor and council members, I remember being at the Smart and Final, and Mr. Johnson, you gave me your card, and you said that anything I needed, any concerns regarding the city, that you would be willing to listen. And this was prior to you being mayor. I have been living here in West Covina for about 20 years. I moved here looking for a safe place for my children to grow up in. West Covina is deteriorating. Just like others have noticed, local businesses have been closing. There are so many sirens being heard at night when about 20 years ago it was silent. There's graffiti ongoing graffiti, helicopters hovering overnight. It is not a safe place for my children, the community, my students. I am upset that the 21 maintenance workers were fired. This, I don't understand how someone can make decisions, and I don't know exactly who did these decisions, but their livelihoods were affected. I don't know how someone can make these decisions and not think of the impact that it would have on their lives and their families. Too often, leaders have a self-serving attitude. Every day, I pray for leaders to have a heart of selflessness and servitude. I pray that this council thinks about the job they have sworn to do. Serve the people, look out for the city's true needs, and commit to making it better. Taxing the people is not the answer. Thoughtful and wise decisions must be made. So I pray today that you look into the decision you're about to make and truly, truly find it in your hearts to make the right decision. I love West Covina. I plan to stay here for my children to grow up here and have grandchildren here. I have committed myself to the school I work at, the district, this city, and I hope that you all can do the same. Commit to our city and make the right decisions. Thank you.
Our final speaker, Gail Mason.
Hi, Gail Mason, and a resident. We've seen the big picture. We've been hearing about it, but let's take a small snapshot of a senior on limited income living in West Covina, of which I am. We all have something called disposable income. And if that shrinks, then we can't purchase other things that we might need. And if our tax is getting larger and larger, then where we put our disposable income is going to shrink. And I'm not the only senior living on a fixed income. I've been in West Covina many years. I will never leave here. I love the city. But when I hear the word bankrupt, I can get sick. I really get sick because it means that there's been problems and they weren't fixed. And I would hope that you would all say no against this tax because it's going to impact a whole lot of West Covina residents. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the last speaker. Is there anyone else would like to have, if they never turn in a card, would you like to say something before I close it? Okay, not hearing anybody. I will close this public comment. And City Manager, do you have any comments?
Just to respond to a couple of items, there was a comment made about maintenance vehicles. The City Council approved that a few months ago. At the same time, we've held off the purchase of those vehicles knowing of the changes we were making in the maintenance department. So the city is not moving forward with the full purchase of the vehicles. Actually, we reduced the number of vehicles that were actually purchased. I think the City Council already addressed the item about graffiti staff. Graffiti staff is not being released. There's a question about the Elephant Bar. There is a business being proposed to go in there. It's going under environmental review right now, and once that environmental review is done, it will come forth to our Planning Commission for review, and it may or may not get to the City Council level. I don't think it's a secret. I think everybody knows because they've had public meetings. Is Chick-fil-A is interested in going into that location. Albertsons, we've been working closely with the property owner. It was a decision of the property owner, not the city, of Albertsons leaving. And so we've been working diligently with Albertsons, or excuse me, not Albertsons, but the owner of the former Albertsons site to try and find another business to relocate there. We've had interest from everything from Whole Foods to come back into town, Sprouts. We're still working with Trader Joe's. We haven't had a chance to get them to come back. They're focusing more on urban areas like New York City, Miami, those larger metropolitan areas. The stairway enclosure keeps being brought up. I want to make sure that people understand that the funding source for that, for majority of it, was actually construction tax, which can only be used for capital improvements of city facilities. Cannot be used for salaries of staff. And then lastly, there's a comment about the city attorney fees. The city attorney, through the contract, is allowed an annual increase based on CPI. The city attorney's office is not increasing their rates this year because of the financial challenges of the city. With that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it over to you for the next item.
Is there any comments from the council? Okay.
Do you have the number of businesses that have opened in West Covina in the last year?
I don't have that number available. Yeah, we'd be more than happy to bring that information back if you'd like to.
Okay. At this time, we shall move to item number 1. City Manager, who will give that report?
I can give a brief staff report if the City Council would like. All right. Nicole, do you want to give me a hand with the PowerPoint?
Make a motion before we do the report, that we just reject doing the tax. And if there's a vote to do that, then we don't have to have a meeting. So, yeah, so I'll make a motion.
Second.
All right. Is there any other comment before we move forward?
I mean, I'm not going to vote for this either, but I do think it's important. We should hear the information.
All right.
Well, that's not my fault. It's because we need it.
We'll just take a minute to have it load up.
Well, first of all, before we move forward,
Yes.
we did have a motion and we had a second.
Yeah.
So we have to move forward on the motion first before we move forward. And if this motion passes, I have to be honest, there's no sense in moving forward. If it
That's
passes,
completely up to the city council.
I'm all for that. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, was that a motion to receive and file?
All right. Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
So I won't be voting for this either. But let me tell you why I won't. First of all, I was never really in favor of a parcel tax. As I mentioned, I was in favor of a sales tax. But especially now, since our Firefighters Association and the public or the Police Officer Association will not support a public safety parcel tax at this time, and currently are still unwilling to make pension reforms at this time, I can't support this measure. As I said before, a local sales tax would have been better and would not double tax our residents. Businesses would not face an increase with a sales tax, but it does with a parcel tax. And because of that, they would pass it on to its customers, which means our owners of property would be taxed twice. We have 2 malls in West Covina producing millions of dollars in tax revenues from people living outside of West Covina. So they would pay their fair share of public safety and infrastructure if we had a sales tax. But 2 of our council members won't let the people decide, as you have heard before. One member has the unions believe there is no financial problems in the city. Yet, when I've asked for him to show us the numbers, and you know I'm a numbers person, he says he can't. Sounds like he's politicking. At our last meeting, he said we need to be more like San Gabriel. Well, San Gabriel increased the transient occupancy tax to 12%, which he was unwilling to do, and is now looking and has asked for a report from county to go to county fire, which the residents of West Covina said, we don't want to be county fire. I imagine that next year, the city will be in the same position as this year and will not have a budget before June 30th. The city will be facing between $1.5 and $2 million in more PERS increases as well as medical expenses. So how will that be resolved? The city again will be facing more cuts, which will affect public safety, community services, and infrastructure repairs, to name just a few areas. In addition, I'm tired of people saying that we're here to make money on our own. This council has not been that way. We have cut our travel expenses. We have cut our auto expenses. We have done all of that. Yet no one realizes that. Some of us has pretty much financed our campaigns before. Others have gone out and asked for a lot of small contributions from people, which people have been willing to do. And I thank them for everyone who had given me a contribution or anyone else. As I said, I still believe in a sales tax, but that's not going to happen. And I also want to let everyone know that I'm not politicking. I am not running for re-election. So if you think I was politicking, you're wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to support the motion to receive and file also, because I don't think this is the right kind of tax for the residents. I think the sales tax is the right one to go forward on because for the reasons that were stated at the last meeting. I talked to a lot of residents, and I just don't think the community, there's a support for this, for the residents to do it, so I think it's a waste. 66.7% is a tough number to get to regardless, and if you have a divided council, you have people saying that there is no issue when they know that there is. It's going to be confusing to the voters, and you're never going to convince 2/3 of the voters to pass something like that when they're told that a tax for public safety is a waste of money, and that's things that have been said. So I do think that the sales tax is the right way to do it. I don't think our community is ready for this one. We've had months of budget process, and some of us have taken the responsible vote and actually voted to cut stuff. There are people who would like to believe that you can have it both ways, and you can't. If you have limits, you have to cut. And 80% of our general fund is police officers and firefighters. It's public safety. And I don't know what, nobody's perfect. I mean, I don't know what the perfect formula is, but I am very reluctant to, to let go public safety personnel. And so, but you have to make these decisions to do that. And so I have said, we have a structural deficit problem. It's true, we do. So we are still waiting to hear other plans, but I think, we need to go forward in the community and see if there are other plans. There's things that are being worked on, but nothing definite. And I think we have to go back and get more input, and we have to educate and let people know, there ought to be more people here to come up with ideas about how to fix this if there is a way to fix it. I'm open to ears. I think there is a reason why so many cities are going forward with the sales tax because they're in the same boat. And I think by my calculation, we're paying. I think we paid over $21 million to that we didn't have to before when I first got elected through PERS. So these are things that have been thrust upon us based on decisions made prior to any of us getting elected to the city council. And if you have a question about what that means, come ask me. I'm happy to explain it to you. So yeah, I will be supporting. I will vote to receive and file also.
Before we do take the vote on this, we just had National Night Out. I had the opportunity to stop at 9 different spots, and I talked to the residents. My question to them was, would you support a property tax? Every one of them said no. It was 100% no. I do listen to the residents. Some of the decisions I make, I have to calculate what I feel is best for the overall city. Most of them, I have to say, 90% said they would support some type of a sales tax if it was structured the right way. Unfortunately, we can't do that. So I had all intention on when I'm coming in tonight, before Councilman Spencer, to receive and file it, because I did listen to the residents. So I will be supporting this measure. So I think that's the last of it. So let's have a roll call. A vote, and we go from there.
Spence?
Aye.
Toma?
Aye.
Warshaw?
Aye.
Wu?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye. It passes 5-0. And I think that was the only item we had to talk about. So I guess we make a motion to adjourn if there's nothing else to say. Okay. We're adjourned.
Sweet.
It's okay. It's like whatever.
The L points and no tax.
Exactly, whatever.